Hello, and welcome to this video in the All About Respect Bystander Intervention series, which aims to focus on understanding what we mean by hate crime. So as you may remember from the first video on bystander intervention, the first steps in the process of becoming an active bystander is to notice and identify an event. So in this context, what we're trying to do is help individuals understand what we mean by hate crime. In other words, we want them to notice such events when they may occur and identify the risks associated with such events, either to the individuals involved or to society as a whole. This video has been designed to provide a basic introduction to hate crime, and throughout the video we will signpost to additional resources where you can find out more. But why is it important to look at hate crime? Well, recorded statistics suggest that there's been an increase in hate crime, with almost 115,000 incidences reported in the 2020-2021 measurement year. This is almost a 10% increase on the previous years. And what we see in the data is that there are often spikes in reports of hate crime in relation to national and international events. These events can include things such as the EU referendum, terrorist attacks, and there was also spikes in reports in relation to the 2020 Black Lives Matter campaigns. So, what do we mean by hate crime? Well, the definition on the screen highlights how hate crime is really any offence, any criminal offence, which is motivated by a person's actual or perceived identity, and that identity could be related to race, religion, sexual orientation, or disability. Hate crime can also include any crime motivated by hostility or prejudice towards somebody who identifies as transgender or is perceived to be transgender. So what's important in this definition is that hate crime is related to these core protected characteristics, but is also based on people's either their actual identity or their perceived identity. So when we break this down a little bit more, in North Yorkshire, there are also the additional categories of misogyny and sex worker status included as aspects of the identity which may pose a risk for hate crime. But what's really important to highlight is that hate crime can include any type of crime that is related to somebody's identity. This diagram highlights how hate crimes can include behaviours such as physical assault, verbal abuse, and incitement to hatred. But as we've just highlighted, any crime really that is perpetrated because of someone's identity, if that identity falls within those protected characteristics, could be defined as a potential hate crime. And one of the hardest things to recognise is often people will say that they're just trying to have a laugh or it's just a bit of banter. And it's really important to remember that hate crime is any crime that is motivated by hostility and prejudice. The attempt to be engaging in banter is never an excuse if that behaviour is motivated by hostility or prejudice. And it's important to remember what banter actually means. Banter reflects a playful or friendly exchange, for example, teasing remarks and engaging in good-humoured teasing. Banter is not any type of behaviour that is motivated by such hostility. And the following video really highlights some different examples of hate crime that we may witness in the community.
Target anyone with verbal, online, or physical abuse because of their religion, transgender identity. You may be committing a hate crime. It's not just offensive, it's an offence.
So as we can see from that video, hate crime can cover a number of different types of criminal activities. And these criminal offences are covered in the law under the following acts summarised on this slide. And the link to these acts, and for more information on how hate crime is covered in the law, you can access the link at the bottom of the slide. So this first part of the video aimed to give you a bit of an introduction to hate crime, including what it is, how we define it, and how it is covered in the law. If you'd like to find out more about hate crime and the legal definition of hate crime, you can access some of the information on these websites. So, to find out a little bit more about hate crime and how it is influenced by misunderstandings and misconceptions about different individuals in society, we've put together this short quiz. Remember, you can pause the video at any time, but you might find it helpful to make a note of your answers as we move through the quiz. So if it's helpful, you might want to get a piece of paper and a pen now, pause the video before we work through the questions. So if you're ready, we're going to work through 5 questions, and we'd just like you to consider your answers to these questions carefully. So question 1, racism isn't a problem in the UK. Is that true or false? Keep a note of your answer and we'll go through the answers shortly. Question 2, asylum seekers are here only to claim benefits. Is that true or false? Question 3. The UK takes in more refugees and asylum seekers than any other country. Again, is that true or false? Question 4. Gay men are feminine and lesbian women are butch. Is that true or false? Finally, question 5. People with disabilities don't want to or can't be in relationships. Is that true or false? So we've posed 5 questions there and tried to tap in whether you think those statements are true or false. Again, you might find it helpful to pause the video here before we go through the answers, just to reflect upon your answers to the questions. What we're going to do now is go through each question in turn, talking through the correct answer. So question 1, racism isn't a problem in the UK. Well, the answer is false. Hate crime is still a problem in the UK, and data from the Home Office for the 2018-19 suggests that the majority of hate crimes reported were race-related. So that suggests that racism continues to be a problem in the UK. Question 2. Asylum seekers are here to claim benefits. The answer to that is false. The majority of asylum seekers are actually not entitled to and are not aware of the benefit system in the UK. Many individuals choose to come to the UK as they speak the language, or they may have family here. So to argue that asylum seekers are only here to claim benefits is false. Question 3. The UK takes in more refugees and asylum seekers than any other country. Again, false. The UK actually takes in less than 1% of the world's refugees. In fact, Turkey, Pakistan and Lebanon are home to the most refugees when you look at international data. Question 4. Gay men are feminine and lesbian women are butch. False. There are a range of identities in the LGBT community. Butch and feminine are just some of the ways that people can identify, but these terms aren't simply related to individual gender identities or sexual orientation. They are simply ways that some people may choose to present themselves. And finally, question 5. People with disabilities don't want to be in or can't be in relationships. much like the other statements, this is an alarmingly common misconception about individuals with disabilities, and particularly related to whether people in disabilities can be in or can't be in relationships. People with disabilities can, of course, form relationships, but often report that relationship education, particularly that in schools, does not cover such issues. So we've worked through 5 different questions here. And one of the things that you might want to think about is, why is it important that we consider such myths, such misconceptions and prejudices that seem to be alarmingly common in society today? Well, when we think about such issues, we can relate this back to what's known as the pyramid of violence. And the pyramid of biased behaviours suggests that such behaviours grow out of smaller acts of bias, of misunderstanding, of common stereotypes and misconceptions. And this bias element here is the foundation to additional types of behaviours. Behaviours related to prejudice and discrimination, so acts of hate crime, serious acts of violence such as terrorism, murder and assault, to, even at the top of the pyramid of violence, criminal acts such as genocide. So the aim is, by tackling incidents or prejudices and attitudes related to misconceptions and bias, if we can challenge these levels of the pyramid, we aim to overall change the culture where more serious acts of physical violence may be less likely to happen. Because if small acts of bias go unchallenged, then this aids the development of a culture where behaviours at the top of the pyramid become more acceptable. So if we challenge these lower levels, hopefully we change that cycle of acceptance of inappropriate behaviours. So what bystander intervention aims to do is to empower people to challenge and intervene in behaviours which typically we see at the bottom end of the pyramid. And the aim of bystander intervention is to empower people to challenge behaviours, but only when it is safe to do so. This sends a clear message to those people who are experiencing these types of behaviours, so inappropriate jokes, comments, insensitive remarks, or non-inclusive language. This, if we challenge these, that sends a message to those experiences these behaviours, that those behaviours are not condoned and are not supported. Bystander intervention also aims to challenge those who perpetrate these acts, to make it clear that such behaviour is not acceptable. And intervening in such behaviours can also send a clear message of support to those who are having these experiences, and hopefully lessen the impact. So in this video, we're going to find out a little bit more about the impact of hate crime on victims.